This message was not algorithmically generated for your feed. It was divinely appointed for your soul. Stop for a moment. Still your heart. If you are reading these words, it is because heaven has intercepted your frequency. The silent, agonizing questions you've held in the dead of night. The profound exhaustion that has settled deep within your bones. The feeling of being completely and utterly misunderstood by everyone around you. None of it was in vain. It was a signal. A spiritual flare shot up from the battlefield of your soul. And this, right now, is heaven's roaring response. You have been seen, not in your moments of performance, but in your moments of profound, silent endurance. You are on the precipice of understanding why every tear, every betrayal, and every moment of quiet loyalty was not a punishment, but the most sacred preparation you could ever endure. The world is about to witness the promotion that your private pain has purchased. This is your ultimate confirmation. The harrowing trials you have navigated were not random attacks of fate. They were meticulously designed divine examinations, intended to excavate the treasure buried deep within you. They were forged to reveal the unshakable core of your spirit. While countless others would have shattered, lashed out in bitterness, or betrayed the sacred process for a moment of temporary relief, you chose a different path. You chose the harder path. You stayed loyal when it cost you everything. You stayed quiet when your heart was screaming for justice. You cried your way through the darkness, navigating by faith alone. Heaven witnessed every excruciating second. And now, the celestial court is moving to reward the very thing that no one on earth ever took the time to applaud. We will now journey through 7 divine chapters, a sacred scroll that will illuminate the profound journey you have just completed and unveil the glorious destiny that awaits you. Welcome to Chosen Pathways, a sanctuary for the soul that has walked through fire. Before we delve into the heart of this revelation, I implore you to solidify your connection to this frequency. Take a moment to like this message, to share it with another soul who you know has been walking a similar, silent path, and most importantly, to subscribe to Chosen Pathways. This is more than just content. It is a covenant community, a divine confirmation sent directly from the throne room for the chosen ones who have been hidden, tested, and are now being revealed. To every single soul who has supported this channel, who has stood with us in faith, your loyalty, your presence, and your belief are the very winds that lift these messages into the ether. May God pour back into you a blessing so immense it overflows into every corner of your life. Your faith is seen, it is deeply felt, and heaven is taking meticulous note of it all. If your spirit is vibrating in unison with these words, if you feel a profound recognition in the depths of your being, I want you to make a spiritual declaration right now. Type, "I remained loyal," in the comments below. Those 3 words are not just a comment. They are a powerful spiritual signal. It is a testament sent to the heavens, a declaration that you withstood the crushing pressure, that you did not fold when everything was designed to break you, that you remained faithful through the searing fire, the deafening silence, and the soul-shattering heartbreak. Not everyone will have the spiritual stamina to make it to the end of this message. Only those who truly comprehend the sacred cost of suffering in silence, of remaining loyal when it brought them nothing but pain, and of crying tears that no one else could ever understand, will remain. This is not a message you simply listen to once and forget. This is a living word, a divine scroll that unveils deeper layers of truth each time your soul leans in. Watch it again when the world makes you feel weak. Replay it when your path forward seems clouded. Because with every listen, heaven will highlight a new piece of the test you have miraculously passed, and the magnificent reward that is now being irrevocably released into your life. You didn't just survive the war, you passed the test. And because you passed, your elevation is no longer a distant hope. It is an approved and imminent reality. Let us now dive into the sacred depths. Chapter 1. The test you could not explain. Chosen one, there are certain trials that God will guide you through in absolute stillness and secrecy. This is not because he desires for you to suffer alone, but because the spiritual weight of the test, the sheer sanctity of the process, is too holy, too profound, to be shared with just anyone. The refining you endured was not something you could articulate in a social media post. This wasn't a battle where you could poll your friends for advice or seek counsel from a mentor. No, this was a sacred, hidden crucible. It was the kind of refining fire that comes with no name, no advanced warning, and certainly no instruction manual. It was holy, it was hidden, and it was excruciatingly hard. You found yourself marooned in a spiritual wilderness where nothing made logical sense. The maps you once trusted were useless, and the compass of your understanding spun wildly. The very people you expected to stand with you, to understand your journey, were the ones who seemed most perplexed by your state. Some, unable to comprehend the invisible war you were fighting, quietly walked away. Others, in their limited perception, misread your necessary silence as weakness, or they misinterpreted your strategic distance as arrogance or pride. But the unvarnished truth was that you were in a war zone of the soul, contending with invisible, relentless opposition. You were carrying burdens in your chest so heavy they had no words, praying prayers that could only escape your lips as guttural groans and silent, streaming tears. You were profoundly misunderstood. You were emotionally and spiritually exhausted, drained to the very dregs of your being. And yet, against all logic and every instinct for self-preservation, you kept going. You continued to show up. You remained faithful to your commitments. You held your position in the spirit when it would have been infinitely easier, and perhaps even justifiable, to quit. Why? What anchor held you so firm in such a violent storm? It was because your loyalty was never predicated on outcomes or external validation. You were not serving God for the applause of men. You were, and are, rooted in something far deeper, something eternal, covenant. This was not a trial that could be prepared for intellectually or navigated with cleverness. This was a test of the heart, designed to reveal the very core of your being. It pulled out the real you, the you that could be unequivocally trusted when no one was watching. The you that would stubbornly keep believing even when every piece of evidence screamed that it was hopeless. The you that would remain loyal, steadfast, and true when every fiber of your being was screaming at you to run for your life. God permitted this intense, silent test not to expose your flaws for condemnation, but to confirm your unshakable faith for coronation. And in those moments when it felt like your entire world was crumbling, when everything you held dear was falling apart, it was God Himself who was holding you together, even when you couldn't feel His presence, even when you questioned His goodness, even when you wondered if you were being systematically punished. Let this truth settle into your spirit. He wasn't punishing you. He was purifying you. He wasn't breaking you. He was breaking things off of you. Some things simply had to be stripped away. Certain limiting mindsets had to be shattered. Old, self-sabotaging habits had to die a final death. People who were never assigned to your glorious future, but were only part of your history, had to fall away. This was not because you were cursed, but because you were being consecrated. You were being set apart for a holy purpose. And God never promotes what He has not first thoroughly proven. The people around you, even those closest to you, had no concept of the true weight you were carrying. They couldn't see the divine calling that was being forged in the darkness of your trial. They couldn't perceive the precious oil of anointing that was being pressed from the agony of your pain. And this was intentional, a divine strategy. Because this test was never meant for public consumption. It was not for likes, shares, or worldly recognition. It was for heaven's record books. It was about proving, once and for all, who you really are in the spirit. This was not a performance test. It was a character test. God wasn't checking your ability to shout and praise in a crowded room. He was checking your ability to stand firm and worship in a desolate private valley. He wasn't looking for how eloquently you could speak to others about your faith. He was looking at how intently you could hear His still, small voice when nothing else in your life made sense. And the most powerful, earth-shaking part of it all, you passed. You didn't pass by being flawless or perfect. You passed by being faithful. You passed by dragging yourself into prayer when no one else was praying for you. You passed by continuing to worship when every part of you felt shattered. You passed by refusing to quit when you had every logical, emotional, and spiritual reason to do so. And now, heaven has it all on record. The secret endurance, the silent suffering, the quiet, costly obedience. All of it has been written down. And what no human eye saw, God saw with perfect clarity. Chapter 2. Loyalty when it didn't benefit you. Chosen one. The concept of loyalty sounds beautiful in poetry and song, but its true nature is only revealed when it is tested in the crucible of silence and obscurity. It is remarkably easy to be loyal when loyalty is rewarded with applause, recognition, and tangible benefits. It's simple to stand by someone's side when it leads to open doors, support, and celebration. But the authentic, heaven-grade test of loyalty never takes place in the bright lights of celebration. It happens in the deep, lonely shadows of obscurity. You found yourself standing faithfully in rooms that no longer felt warm or welcoming. You found yourself pouring out support for people who never once uttered the words, "Thank you." You found yourself clinging to divine assignments that were draining the very life out of you, not because you were weak or lacked boundaries, but because you knew, in the core of your spirit, that they were God-given. There were countless moments when you questioned if you should stay, moments when your soul screamed for you to walk away, to protect your own peace, to guard your own heart. But every time you were about to turn and leave, a whisper in your spirit, a deep, resonant knowing, held you in place. This isn't about your comfort. This is about your covenant. Loyalty, in its purest form, is so much more than simply being present when it is convenient. It is being spiritually rooted when everything and everyone around you is shifting and shaking. It is staying true to the call on your life when the circumstances are screaming at you to abandon your post. You stayed when you had every moral and emotional right to leave, and you received no credit for it. No one posted on social media about your incredible endurance. No one wrote a tribute to your faithfulness. But heaven was recording every single moment. You remained loyal when doors were violently slammed in your face. You stayed faithful when people you had poured into turned their backs on you. You held your post even when the divine instructions no longer made logical sense. Even when God himself felt distant. Even when the promised reward felt indefinitely delayed. Even when it looked like others who compromised were speeding past you while you were forgotten and left behind. You stayed. And that kind of loyalty cannot be taught in a seminar. It cannot be learned from a book. It can only be proven in the fire. You didn't remain out of a desire to impress people. You didn't keep going because you were trying to be the hero of the story. You weren't waiting for a pat on the back or for someone to finally clap for you. You stayed, not because of perfect alignment with your circumstances, but because your spirit knew something that your emotions and your intellect had not yet caught up with. Others may have looked at your situation and thought you were being passive, that you were foolishly wasting your time, that you were being too nice, too forgiving, too quiet. But they had no spiritual lens to see the truth. They didn't know that your restraint was a prophetic act. They couldn't see that your endurance was the highest form of obedience. They failed to understand that your loyalty was a spiritual weapon, one forged in the fires of pure trust, not ego. You weren't being held back. You were being held steady by the hand of God Almighty. Because there is a version of you, a higher, more powerful version, that can only emerge through sustained, unwavering obedience, through a commitment that remains unshaken in the face of neglect, and through a loyalty that costs you something precious. And heaven takes that kind of loyalty with the utmost seriousness, because when you prove that you can stay true in the hidden, thankless places, God knows he can trust you with the visible, celebrated ones. When you remain anchored to your assignment without any tangible benefit, God knows you are not merely chasing blessings. You are chasing him. This is precisely why you are on the verge of being rewarded in ways that will make no sense to the outside world. Because the very loyalty they questioned is the loyalty that God has just stamped with his divine seal of approval. You didn't stay for personal gain. You stayed for God. And now he is about to show the world why a loyalty as pure and as costly as yours is never, ever wasted. Chapter 3. Silence when you could have spoken. Chosen one. There is a particular type of strength that is so rare, so powerful, that it is seldom celebrated or even recognized by the world. It is the strength to remain silent when you possess every reason, every right, and every piece of evidence to speak your truth. You had the facts. You had the receipts. You had the undeniable right to defend yourself. You knew exactly what happened behind closed doors. You knew what was said in hushed, malicious whispers. You knew how events were twisted, how the narrative was manipulated, and how your name was handled carelessly and cruelly in rooms where you were not present to offer a defense. You could have laid it all out. You could have corrected every lie, dismantled every false narrative, and exposed what was done in the dark. You could have demanded justice, an apology, and public vindication. But you didn't. And that monumental choice was not born from weakness or fear. It was a decision made from a place of profound, sacred wisdom. You chose to remain silent, not because you didn't feel the crushing weight of the injustice, but because you understood something far deeper. You understood that sometimes silence is the highest and most potent form of trust in God. You understood that when God is your ultimate defender, your only true assignment is to stay in your spiritual position and let Him fight for you. You knew, deep in your spirit, that if you opened your mouth prematurely, if you gave in to the temptation to defend your own honor, you might interfere with the intricate, divine vindication that heaven was meticulously arranging behind the scenes. So you stayed still, not bitter, not resentful, not plotting your revenge. You simply stayed quiet. You stayed focused on your own walk with God. You stayed aligned with your purpose. What onlookers perceived as passivity was, in reality, elite spiritual discipline. What others assumed was indifference to your own reputation was actually your unwavering commitment to protecting your inner peace. They could not see the ferocious war you were fighting internally, just to stay grounded, to remain graceful, to keep your heart from becoming hard and cynical. God saw every single moment you chose to preserve your dignity instead of reacting out of wounded pride. He saw the sleepless nights you spent replaying the conversations, the betrayals, the staggering misunderstandings, and still, you chose the higher path of silence over the temporary satisfaction of self-defense. He saw how incredibly difficult it was to swallow your words when your flesh begged you to speak out, to set the record straight. He saw how you refused to stoop to their level and match their energy, even when your name was being dragged through the mud without an ounce of mercy. And that silence, that holy restraint, has become one of the loudest and most powerful declarations of who you truly are. It spoke volumes about your character. It proved your spiritual maturity. It shouted your strength from the heavens without ever making a sound. There is a silence that has the power to crush lies without ever having to name them. There is a silence that positions you for a divine elevation that is far beyond what winning an argument could ever grant you. There is a silence that becomes your unique signature in heaven, a clear sign that you are ready for a blessing that can never be contested or taken away from you. You did not choose silence because you had nothing to say. You chose silence because you had something far greater to protect: your peace, your purpose, and your sacred position with God. And now, the very same God you trusted to speak for you is about to answer on your behalf, not just with words, but with irrefutable evidence, with tangible results, with doors flying open that no human being can shut, with a level of favor that no one can possibly deny, with opportunities so great that no one can claim they were the ones who gave them to you. He is about to speak your name with honor in the very places you refuse to defend it. He is about to answer the questions you never felt the need to explain. He is about to restore everything your silence was tested for, and so much more. Because when heaven finally speaks, the petty noise of mankind fades into absolute nothingness. You trusted God to have the final word. Now, watch in awe as He uses it to write the glorious next chapter of your life. A chapter that no one will ever be able to rewrite, question, or cancel. All because you chose the higher road. All because you passed the sacred test of silence. Chapter 4. Tears that watered your assignment. Chosen one. It is imperative that you understand the profound spiritual significance of the tears you cried in secret. They were never for a single moment, wasted. They were not merely emotional reactions to pain. They were sacred, spiritual offerings. They were liquid prayers, articulate and potent, rising to the heavens when your voice had no strength left. Every single tear that fell from your face, every sob that shook your body in the lonely darkness, landed in a place that truly mattered, the realm of the spirit. Every single one carried immense weight in heaven. You weren't just weeping out of pain. You were weeping your way into your purpose. You were releasing the anguish, the confusion, and the hope that your voice could not articulate. You were communicating on a spiritual frequency that only heaven could fully comprehend. And heaven heard you, loud and crystal clear. There were so many nights when you simply could not put your overwhelming feelings into coherent words. You couldn't explain the storm that was raging inside of you. Often, you didn't even fully know why you were crying. You just knew that something deep within your spirit was breaking, shifting, stretching, and being reborn. You were being radically expanded through an emotional fire. You were being deepened by a divine pressure that was shaping you into a vessel of honor. And God was allowing the tears, not to crush your spirit, but to cleanse your soul. People on the outside may have thought you were falling apart. They may have whispered that you were losing your mind. But God saw you through a completely different lens. He saw you breaking open, much like a seed must do before it can bear magnificent fruit. He saw your tears softening the hard, fallow soil of your calling, preparing it for a supernatural harvest. He saw your heart yielding, surrendering, and bending into a deeper level of obedience, even as it bled with pain. There were desolate moments when no one checked on you. No one had any idea what you were truly carrying. No one knew how heavy your calling felt, or how profoundly lonely your sacred walk had become. You had to keep showing up, keep serving, keep giving, keep smiling, all while you were silently weeping behind the scenes. You fought ferocious spiritual battles that left you emotionally drained, mentally exhausted, and physically weary to the bone. And still, you stayed on your assignment. You cried, and still you prayed. You wept, and still you worshipped. You broke, and still you believed. You were grieving silently, but you were growing deeply. That is the kind of loyalty, the kind of faith, the kind of unyielding perseverance that heaven honors above all else. Because you didn't give up when it got brutally hard. You didn't walk away when your heart was shattered into a million pieces. You didn't abandon your God-given purpose just because the process hurt more than you ever imagined it could. You trusted God with your raw, unfiltered pain. You trusted Him with the full spectrum of your emotions. You let Him see your complete vulnerability, and in doing so, you gave Him full permission to rebuild you from the inside out, stronger and more beautiful than before. Tears are holy to God. The scriptures say that He collects every single one and stores them in His bottle. This means that not one tear you shed was forgotten. Not one moment where you broke down in despair was overlooked. Not one night you cried yourself to sleep alone went unnoticed by the Creator of the universe. Heaven has a full, detailed record of every breakdown, every moment of gut-wrenching despair, every silent sob that shook you in the dark. And now, those very tears are about to speak powerfully for you. They have been working silently in the soil of your future. They have been watering divine promises that you didn't even know were planted in your path. They have been softening the hard ground of your circumstances, preparing a place for supernatural, glorious fruit to grow. What those tears have been building in the spirit, you are about to walk into in the natural realm. There is a harvest directly attached to your sorrow. There is a reward intrinsically linked to your pain. There is a powerful anointing connected to your tears, not because you were pitted, but because you endured, because you trusted, because you held on, even when it felt impossibly unfair. Get ready, chosen one. What you wept over is about to manifest. What you prayed through is about to prosper. What you survived with tears, God is about to crown with glory. Your tears were never a sign of weakness. They were the irrefutable evidence of your profound spiritual strength. And now, what they have watered is about to gloriously, undeniably bloom. Chapter 5. You didn't lose, you outlasted. Chosen one. Let this truth anchor your soul right now. You did not lose. Even though, for a long season, it may have looked like you were losing. Even though it felt as if everything solid in your life was crumbling into dust. Even though from an outside perspective, people may have assumed you were finished, defeated, and done. But heaven knew better. Yes, you lost some friends. Yes, you lost some opportunities that you thought were meant for you. Yes, you lost time, sleep, and pieces of your former self that you will never get back. But none of that means you lost the war. Because what you were actually doing, in the secret place of the Spirit, was outlasting the test. You were not being destroyed, you were being forged. You were not falling behind. You were being set apart. You were not being punished. You were being strategically positioned for a greater glory. Many people started this journey with you. Some walked beside you when the path was easy and the sun was shining. Some celebrated you when it was convenient and popular to do so. But when the fire was turned up, when the pressure intensified, when the spiritual climate shifted and the darkness rolled in, they couldn't take it. Some faded away quietly, without a word of explanation. Others folded under the immense weight of the trial. But you remained. Not because you had all the answers. Not because you were the strongest or most talented person in the room. But because deep down, in the core of your spirit, you knew that this divine process was never about speed or the spotlight. It was always about spiritual stamina. This was not a race of talent. It was a war of perseverance. God wasn't testing your performance for an audience. He was proving your endurance in private. Heaven wasn't checking to see how loud you could shout your praises when everything was going well. Heaven was watching to see how long you could keep moving forward when nothing made sense. And you did it. You outlasted the storm. You stayed awake through the darkest night. You remained faithful when it felt like your faith was producing no results. You kept walking even when the path ahead completely disappeared from view. You kept believing when all the evidence told you to stop. They may have whispered that you lost, but now that the smoke is finally clearing, they will be forced to admit that you are still standing. No, you are not the same person you were before. You've got some scars now. You carry some lessons that were written in pain and processed through excruciating silence. But you are still here. And you are not just here. You are wiser, you are stronger, and you are more spiritually sharp and discerning than you have ever been in your entire life. Because surviving a trial doesn't always look like winning to the world. But in the realm of the Spirit, surviving a divine test of this magnitude always, without exception, means promotion. God was not trying to embarrass you. He was trying to expand you. He allowed the storm to come, not to drown you, but to train you how to breathe under immense pressure. He allowed the heartbreak, the delay, and the betrayal, not because he was punishing you, but because he was pruning you for a greater level of fruitfulness. And now, because you outlasted the very thing that was sent to take you out, you are ready for a level of blessing that others could not carry. This next season of your life is not going to reward the loudest, the most popular, or the most visible. It is going to elevate the ones who stayed, the ones who didn't walk away when it got hard, the ones who kept showing up with broken hearts and tear-stained faces, the ones who didn't lose. They outlasted. And that chosen one is you. Not by your own might, not by your own power, but by sheer spiritual grit and the sustaining hand of God. You have made it. And now, heaven is about to place a crown on you for what you survived in the silence. Chapter 6. Heaven kept the score. Chosen one. Not every act of obedience, not every sacrifice, not every moment of faithfulness you've displayed was ever meant to be seen by the world. But make no mistake, heaven saw it all. There were countless moments when you felt completely invisible. Moments when your dedicated service went unthanked and unacknowledged. When your desperate prayers felt like they were just echoing back from an empty ceiling. When your costly sacrifices seemed to vanish into thin air, yielding no return. You gave. You showed up. You poured out your heart, your energy, and your resources. And in return, you often received nothing but deafening silence. But let this profound truth settle into the deepest recesses of your spirit. The world may not have kept a record, but God never missed a single moment. They didn't see you on your knees, picking up the shattered pieces of your own life, and still giving God your unqualified yes. They didn't see you staying up all night, warring in prayer over your family, fasting for clarity, weeping over the weight of your purpose, standing in the gap for people who didn't even know they were standing on the edge of a cliff. They didn't see how incredibly hard it was for you to simply keep going day after day. They didn't see the brutal inner battles, the moments you wanted to quit and disappear, the heavy, invisible burdens you carried with a quiet, dignified smile. But heaven did. And heaven doesn't just watch, it meticulously records. Every single act of obedience was written down in a celestial ledger. Every time you chose to stay loyal to people who had long since left you behind, it was recorded. Every time you chose to honor God's instructions while others were actively dishonoring you, it was recorded. Every time you chose purity and integrity in a culture that rewards compromise, it was recorded. Every time you said no to the seductive call of bitterness and yes to the difficult path of love and forgiveness, it was recorded. Every time you served without recognition, gave without applause, and prayed without any tangible proof, heaven kept the score. When it looked like nothing was moving in your life, heaven kept the score. When you sowed seeds of faith in a season of drought, when you praised in the midst of excruciating pain, when you waited in the lonely silence, heaven kept the score. God is not some distant, forgetful judge who overlooks the quiet, consistent faithfulness of his chosen ones. He is not blind to your tears or deaf to your whispered prayers. He is intimately watching over his word in your life, carefully keeping track of every precious seed you have sown in secret. Seeds of loyalty, seeds of humility, seeds of restraint, seeds of compassion, seeds of obedience, and seeds of complete surrender. You were never forgotten. You were being measured. You were being weighed in the balances of the Spirit and found faithful. You are being trusted with more, not because of your public performance in front of people, but because of your private posture before God. And now, because the record is complete, heaven is moving on your behalf. There are blessings coming that have your name etched on them, and they didn't come through human manipulation or strategic connection. They came through holy consecration. There are doors beginning to swing open for you, not because you knocked loud enough, but because your life was aligned with the will of God. There are opportunities being released from the heavenly realms, not because you networked your way into the right rooms, but because you stayed obedient when absolutely nobody was watching. Heaven's reward system is never random. It is precise and just. He is a righteous God. He saw what was unfair. He saw everything you endured and, more importantly, how you handled it. He saw how you kept your hands clean in dirty environments. He saw how you were lied on, left out, and profoundly misunderstood, and still did not lose your spiritual posture. Now, the reward is coming. It is not a handout, but a divine inheritance. It is not a coincidence, but a calculated, strategic release. It is not a lucky break, but a spiritual repayment for everything that was faithfully recorded in the silence. Chosen one, God is about to reward you publicly for what you endured privately. He is about to vindicate your loyalty, validate your painful process, and honor your hard-won purity. Your quiet, unseen faithfulness has reached heaven's courtroom, and the verdict is in. It is unequivocally in your favor. You didn't need to shout. You didn't need to defend yourself. You didn't need to prove your worth to anyone. Heaven kept the score. And now, God himself is writing the next chapter of your life in bold, undeniable, irreversible favor. Chapter 7. The elevation begins now. Chosen one, this is the moment. This is the divine intersection that your soul has been pressing toward, even when your mind could not comprehend the path and your heart felt far too heavy to keep going. You did not just survive something terrible, you passed something sacred. And this was not the kind of test that man can evaluate with worldly metrics or academic grades. This was a test of heaven, a trial that required so much more than correct answers. It required unshakable character. It required absolute surrender. It required loyalty in the deepest darkness, silence when you were being slandered, and a stubborn faith when there was no feeling left to fuel you. You did not pass this test through your performance. You passed it through your posture. A posture of worship when your world went silent. A posture of humility when pride would have been an easier and more gratifying response. A posture of unwavering patience when the weight of the waiting became almost unbearable. A posture of radical purity when compromise was calling your name from every direction. Your loyalty, your silence, and your tears, these became your holy offering. You carried them when it cost you friends. You carried them when it delayed your reward. You carried them when it stripped away every last vestige of your ego. And through it all, you never let go of the hand of God. While others were watching your earthly steps, looking for signs of failure or success, God was measuring the depth and resilience of your spirit. While others were asking why you hadn't arrived, yet God was meticulously preparing a level of destiny that required this very kind of spiritual depth. He wasn't just preparing the table for you in the presence of your enemies. He was preparing you to be worthy to sit at it with honor and grace. And now comes the divine exchange. This next elevation in your life is not about you trying harder, striving more, or working longer. It is about you stepping gracefully into what has already been written and ordained for you in the heavens. It will not come through your effort alone. It will come through the evidence of your transformation, the evidence of your obedience, the evidence of your refinement, the evidence that your yes to God in the dark carried more creative power than you ever could have imagined. You are about to be elevated in a way that is so clear, so profound, that it will be undeniable to everyone who witnesses it. It will not be because of your branding, your connections, or your strategy, but because of a divine, unmistakable endorsement. You are being raised up by the hand of God Himself, and no man can manufacture, manipulate, or negate what heaven is about to reveal in and through your life. You are not just being restored, you are being revealed. What was done in the secret, private places of your life is now about to echo loudly in the public square. Those who dismissed you are about to see precisely why God preserved you. Those who counted you out are about to witness God Himself counting you in, publicly, powerfully, and prophetically. This is not for revenge, but for revelation. Because your very life is about to speak what your mouth never had to say. Your breakthrough is going to explain your silence. Your favor is going to validate your faith. Your fruit is going to confirm what God has always known to be true about you. This is not just a promotion. It is a divine recognition. This is what happens when a soul stays faithful in obscurity. When someone serves without a platform. When someone weeps in secret but never, ever stops walking forward on their chosen pathway. You passed the hardest test. You passed when no one was there to applaud you. You passed because you trusted God more than you trusted your own emotions. And now, the elevation begins. This is your time, chosen one. Not because you shouted the loudest, but because you remained loyal, pure, and obedient when no one else was watching. Get ready. The doors are now opening. The reward is now being released. Heaven has just given you the highest grade, and now, the entire world is about to see it. This is the promise for those on the chosen pathway. Your journey has been sanctified, your character has been proven, and your future has been sealed with favor. If this message has been a mirror to your soul, subscribe to Chosen Pathways and join this family of chosen ones. Share this with someone who needs to know that their silent battles have been seen. Your elevation is not a matter of if, but now. Walk into it. You have earned it.